Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and on the show today, we have the full gang, Jen Sanasi, Will Foxley, and Zach Seward. Welcome to the show, guys. And let's kick it off by talking about all of the saga going on with Coinbase at the moment. Zach, walk us through all of that.
Yes, I will. So, very interesting development last night. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong took to Twitter to air out some dirty laundry between Coinbase and SEC in very revealing fashion. Now, this feud is over a forthcoming product known as Coinbase Lend, in which users can toss their USDC in a big pool and get 4% interest or rewards on those deposits. The SEC has concerns that that may actually be a securities offering. Coinbase says, what? Huh? What's going on? And SEC didn't provide them with much detail, but instead slapped them with a Wells notice, which says, hey, if you do this thing, we're going to sue you, so don't do it. That's the story as far as Coinbase. CEO Brian Armstrong laid out last night. SEC has declined to comment to CoinDesk and other outlets. Definitely an interesting development in the Gary Gensler-led SEC here at this point in time, at which crypto seems to be increasingly under the microscope. So I'm going to toss this to Naomi. I thought this was interesting on a number of fronts, chief among them just being the fact that Brian Armstrong just aired it all out on Twitter for the world to see in a fashion that was actually quite divisive in the Twitter commentary. It was like, this is dumb. Oh, this is cool. We appreciate the transparency. This is probably going to bite you in the rear end a little bit down the road. So a ton of stuff here, a lot of interesting elements at play. I'm really curious for your thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I think that what is most striking is how little clarity the SEC is providing. And Coinbase, they're a giant organization. They're not some puny little shop operating out of someone's basement. Like, this is a giant public company, and the SEC won't engage with them. They won't let them know what exactly about it is an SEC that Coinbase has repeatedly asked them. And SEC has responded that, they're assessing the Lend product through the prism of decades-old Supreme Court cases called the Howey and Reeves, and the SEC won't share the assessment itself, only the fact that they are doing this. And so there is no guidance here. Now, the biggest question for me is which part of this is a security? And the SEC has been notorious for never giving clarity on this. Now, Josh Swihart, who's regulatory counsel at Electric Coin Company, actually has a take on that. So he says, it's most likely that the SEC is arguing that USDC is a security because that's the products that Coinbase is going live with. They're initially just offering lending and percentage returns for USDC, and then we'll eventually be adding other products. So if they're considering this stable coin a security, my goodness, that is going to have repercussions all across the crypto space. I think it's great that Coinbase is fighting this publicly because Coinbase has the resources to put up a good fight. And I hope that they do. And I hope they keep it public so that the crypto space can continue to support them. Hats off to Coinbase in this, because another area where I was really impressed when I read about this. So they said that the SEC asked for the name and contact information of every single person on their Lend wait list. Overreach much? My goodness. They said, Coinbase responded, we have not agreed to provide that because we take a very cautious approach to requests for customers' personal information. Thank you, Coinbase. They also said, we don't believe it is relevant to any particular question the SEC might have about Lend involving a security. I agree with that. And he said, especially when the SEC won't share any of those questions with us. So it's almost farcical. It's almost comical to watch all this play out and to see the SEC just trying to grab everything in their vicinity and say, well, it's a security, because the net result of programs like Lend going live would be a complete lack of control from central banks to be able to control the money supply. Central banks can set interest rates for short-term lending, and they can kind of control that because they have so much control over traditional finance. And suddenly you have all of these other lending options out there, and suddenly you have a different velocity of money according to whatever those products want to offer. Like, it just kind of changes the game. So I think that the government is really realizing that they're kind of losing power at this stage, and SEC is right on the front lines fighting that battle for them. So it's interesting to see how this is going to play out. But Will, I will throw this to you for your thoughts. I can't hear
No,
Will.
Will, we can't hear
Will,
you.
you're highly muted, my friend.
Will's been muted.
I apologize.
There we go.
I'm here. Brian's thread was really interesting because it gave you a peek behind the curtain of these big corporations and the US government interacting. Like typically we don't get that. I think the first instance where we saw that kind of happen was with Ripple and the SEC back in December, and Ripple kind of front ran the conversation by posting a blog post about, actually it was a Fortune article, I believe, talking about how the SEC was going to sue them. And now we have Brian Armstrong going to Twitter to talk about it. One thing that he brought up kind of deeper in the thread was talking about how he went to Washington, D.C. in May and met with a lot of heads of government, including Speaker Pelosi, members of Congress, and other regulators on the Hill. Who didn't meet with him? The SEC. They declined to meet with them because they're not talking with crypto companies at this time. Sounds a lot like a middle school girl who's not willing to talk with her boyfriend after some sort of frustrations. It's just extremely childish, and I don't understand why the largest body is not willing to work with crypto companies on this front. Like, this is obviously where the money is moving. This is the direction of financial markets, and yet they're choosing not to interact with it at all. It's deeply frustrating. I'm glad that Brian brought this forward. And Zach, to your point, I think this could hurt them a lot down the line. Like, there's going to be some issues with this down the line because Brian decided to be forthcoming with this information, and that doesn't always look great within jurisdictional cases. Naomi, going to give back to you though.
Yeah, just for some final thoughts, it's not just, strange that they're not engaging. It's completely contradictory and hypocritical, considering that Gensler has just spent the last several months telling the crypto industry, stop going out there and doing things, come to us for permission, engage with us, talk to us. And the companies that are trying to do this, the SEC is saying, we are not engaging with any cryptocurrencies. So what's actually going on here? They're stonewalling the entire crypto industry. So this is a massive battle. We knew that this battle was coming. We've seen it, though, start off with XRP, with Library, with all of these other coins. It's going to continue. It's going to get more and more intense, and this is what we can look forward to. But Zach, your final thoughts before
final thoughts. Just worth mentioning. This is on the tails of a reported inquiry into Uniswap Labs, the firm behind the largest decentralized exchange on Ethereum. I'm sure there are other firms, maybe Compound, which launched Compound Treasury, which is similarly a 4% yield offering on USDC deposits. I'm sure they may have been contacted as well. So interesting to see this escalation in SEC versus DeFi. Naomi, change gears for us. Where are we going?
Let's go to Australia, see what's going on there. It's never good. It's never good what's going on in Australia, because Australia is turning into a totalitarian nightmare. But some interesting things going on in the crypto industry. So Australian crypto has never had a good time in Australia, and banks have historically just consistently shut down accounts. And so now there's a debanking Senate committee hearing potentially on the cards there, because companies are starting to push back and say you can't keep debanking an entire industry. It's just notoriously difficult to get any money into the crypto space in Australia. Ever since like early days, you try to send money to exchanges, your account would be frozen. You have any sort of a side business in crypto, heaven forbid, not only will your account be frozen, but your entire family will no longer be able to operate personal accounts. It's just this very severe situation where Australia does not want anything to do with crypto. So there are inquiries starting to begin into all of this. I mean, it kind of brings up, like, we in the United States, it's not so dissimilar to what's going on in Australia. There has been a long history of banks in America shutting down anything associated with crypto. And actually, as a result of this, Brian Brooks created this fair access rule, which was passed and then it was frozen and rescinded when the new regime came into power. And actually, there was, at the start of the year, Kevin Cramer introduced a Senate bill to try to reinstate that. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen there. But it's just interesting seeing how different countries are responding to this. I have some thoughts on this fair access rule, but I'll throw this to the group to start off with. Jen, what's your take on all of this and banks just not wanting to deal with the crypto industry?
Well, one of the entrepreneurs that was featured in the article had her account closed 91 times over 7 years. That's absolutely insane. She talks about not being able to open a personal account, which then obviously affects so many different facets of her life. And while I was reading this, I was like, is the bank the mafia? Like, how do they have so much control over what's going on? And just coming off of the last story we just talked about, the law and the financial system that are currently in place in our world are so old and haven't changed in so long. And now there's an innovation that is looking to threaten both. And I think that the financial institutions and the regulators are grasping at straws because they don't want to change and they don't know what to do. And we're seeing it all come to a head.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach, throw to you.
Yeah, just to zoom out a little bit. I mean, it's interesting to think about, this crypto economy is very still dependent and reliant on all these traditional on-ramps, right? Like you got to get money into the system somehow. And that moment in time when the money goes from the traditional finance world to the crypto finance world is still fraught with a ton of tension and friction and I think it may be something that people are expecting and pushing to go away, but it's just not going away, right? Like the on-ramp point in crypto is still a hugely fraught, I think, part of the equation for folks who are looking to experience what crypto finance can offer to them. And it's still so reliant on these traditional gatekeepers. So, I mean, we can often overlook and talk about decentralized exchanges and all this DeFi stuff, but you still got to get that money out of that ecosystem in your bank account more often than not so you can buy stuff and put food on the table. So it's interesting to think about how we can never really abstract the crypto finance away from these on-ramp, off-ramp situations. And I think, again, just a lot of friction there still.
Yeah, and I'll add to that it's just so heavily regulated, right? So you may say, well, it's the private banks. They're controlling this. They can make their own decisions about their private business. But it's not that simple. Like if I were to set up shop at my house and say, okay, I won't use the banks. I'll use cash. I'll just set up a shop and it says, name is crypto cash transactions. You can come, you can give me crypto or I'll give you crypto.
Sounds
and we'll
like
just
the
exchange in
best
cash.
place ever.
It would be so much fun and we'd have pool parties. It would be great. But the government would come over immediately and they would throw me in jail for 1 million years, double life sentences plus $1 trillion. They do not want anything like that. They regulate this industry so heavily. They have such tight controls over who is allowed to offer these sorts of things, be money transmitters. It's notoriously difficult to jump through all of the right hoops. So they really have just got such a tight control over this system that, when we talk about, freedom in money, now Bitcoin's released and it's now freedom is here. No, now the battle begins. And now we try to extricate ourselves from this existing system. And it's not an easy battle because we have all these obstacles that the government has put in place and they have full control over all of this. So we got to keep fighting that battle. But Will, I think I saw your hand go up.
Oh no, toss back to Zach. Actually, I had limited.
I just wanted to give
subject.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the people in New Hampshire who did that, and that's exactly what happened. The feds came and knocked down their door and threw lots of life sentences in front of their face for, for running ostensibly an unregistered money transmitting business. But
and when we say unregistered money transmitted business, let's actually talk about what they're doing because they throw all these this big terminology out. And they make it sound so scary and money laundering, all of this. It's like, oh, they were operating an ATM. Oh, well, clearly that's really scary and dangerous. And these people should be thrown in jail forever. Like, it's just ridiculous. They came in with bearcats. They knocked over like their entire window. They had this poor girl, this girlfriend of Ian Freeman standing there like naked for just to humiliate these people before they take them all away for questioning. Like, it's disgusting the way that these things are handled. So it's not an easy system to fight back against. There's a lot of control and embedded control to undo, but Bitcoin's getting there. It's getting there. But Will, I'll throw back to you.
Yeah, I think just looking at the larger picture as well, this isn't only something that Australia is facing. Just look at Binance right now. Look at the struggles they're facing all over the regulatory front across the world. Recently, Singapore told them that they can't operate in that jurisdiction anymore because there was a regulatory warning issued against them. And so they had to shut down. And that's mostly where their operation is in Singapore. So it's not just Australia. It's not just Binance. It's it's most crypto companies around the world at the same time when there's more interest in this technology than ever. So it's very interesting. We're seeing these two things play out in front of our eyes. Really big fight of titans right now.
All right, let's take a quick break. We are going to do a break, and then when we get back on the hash, we are going to talk about another athlete, another shareholder of the FTX crypto exchange. Who is it this time? Jen is going to tell us after the break.
Okay, we're going to take a step back, get a little technical, a little more fun here. Talking about cryptocurrency, talking about Eden Network, which is a protocol that limits the amount of extraction that can be conducted on top of it when you are trading tokens. So this gets really technical really quickly. We're going to try to walk you through it. So Eden Network basically is an exchange that allows you to use their protocol to fight what is called miner extractable value. Miner extractable value is when a miner can kind of like sequence your orders and transactions on chain, and they can kind of extract value by moving transaction A in front of transaction B to create some sort of slippage or arbitrage opportunity. This hurts the cryptocurrency ecosystem itself and also hurts how cryptocurrency protocols themselves work. And it's something that Ethereum builders and other smart contract-based builders are trying to address. Eden Network is one of those networks that's trying to do it, and they're doing it through a native token called Eden and a bunch of other fancy tech on the backside. They recently raised $17.4 million in order to do this, led by Multicoin Capital. So it's a big bet on both smart contracts being the future of exchange, as well as there being a way to solve this miner extractable value issue, which has been known about since as early as 2015, 2016, but has yet to be addressed in any sort of conclusive manner. Zach, I don't know if you took a look at this story, but MEV has obviously been kind of a headline, at least for a year now. It kind of died off a little bit with NFT summer coming around, but at least through April, it was a really big story. So I want to get your take on Eden Network.
I knew you were going to pick on me, but Jen raised her hand. So Jen, you got it.
I just have a question. So either Will or Zach can answer it. So Will, you explained the issues around MEV on the show probably back in April. And now we have a solution here. And so when I was reading the article, the solution said there's a set of really easy to understand and follow and transparent rules that people have to abide by for this to work. What are those? Like, how does this work, and how do we know that people are going to follow them?
Yeah, for sure. So Eden Network and every single one of these MEV networks has their own little rules that you have to follow along with. Basically, what they're trying to do is create a marketplace for an agreed upon rule set for how miners and traders kind of interact with each other. So typically when you're pushing like an Ethereum transaction or a stablecoin transaction on chain, you're just throwing it out there into what's called the memory pool. Miners pick up that transaction, they broadcast around the network, and everyone kind of writes it down on their own little ledger, and boom, you have your transaction on chain. What these networks do is say, hey, send your transaction to our private pool. We're going to write it down, and we'll broadcast it to the network under our own little guide set. And that means that you have like a more private transaction, but you also have more protection against other people seeing your transaction. Because remember, in the first transaction, everyone can see it. Anyone can do whatever they want with it. In the second one, it's more private. There's less information available on chain, so less people can mess with your transaction. So what I like to kind of compare this to is the whole Reddit GameStop thing that happened in January. It's not exactly the same, but it's quite similar. So we saw that big hedge funds have the power to front run or back run your transaction because they're getting the payment flow of transactions from the brokers. They're able to say like, this transaction came here, this transaction came here, and then they're able to kind of move the prices around that information of trade settling. Same thing happens in blockchains, except it's just totally public information. These networks like Eden Network or Flashbots, make it more private, and you subscribe to them and use their rule set in order to kind of create like a play box of transactions and make things both a little bit cheaper and a little bit more private. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's a very big and broad topic, and you can talk about it for a few hours. But Zach, I do want to keep picking on you. I'll come back for you.
Oh,
so what do you think about this whole?
Get back to me.
I'm interested to your take from like a funding standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, what the big picture here is just like a level playing field for all traders, right? And I think MEV represents the failings of that in these networks, where sophisticated or otherwise so inclined traders are able to, as you said, just like act on information that benefits them ahead of other people who just want to use the network to send someone a CryptoKitty or something, So the fact that there's these tools that are out here looking to incentivize a level playing field, I think is great. I think it's something that it is hard to like grasp, and it's like hard to engage with for, I think, most readers. So the ability to sort of like be like, okay, here's a solution in which we're incentivizing a level playing field, I think is super important. And for them to raise like a fairly large seed round, like 17.4 million is like not nothing for a seed round, indicates that people who are in this space and making money on large investments see this as a problem that needs fixing. And there's a bunch of different solutions out there, and some folks think this is the solution that may work and may win out. So that to me, again, just the sort of the level playing field that these networks should be, but sometimes aren't, is what these solutions are hoping to solve.
So, Naomi, I wanted to get your thoughts on the subject really quickly. I'm wondering specifically, have you looked into like Flashbots versus Eden Network before and kind of seen like the two different models, or not so much yet?
I haven't been exploring that, but what I love about all of this is there's not just competition in chains in crypto where we think, oh, well, we move to a different chain, we can see what's better, and this competitive environment kind of pushes everyone to be better. You have these public chains, and you have all these different iterations on top of that are also competing and providing solutions. So there's just so much optionality. It's such a stark contrast to what we see in these very bureaucratic, heavily regulated areas where no one's allowed to do anything because it's always just shut down. So I'm loving that we have all of these different solutions, people out there willing to fund all of this. I think it's really exciting. And so I hope that this helps Ethereum. They've kind of been plagued with a lot of different issues on a wide spectrum, but there are all kinds of people innovating on this. So very excited to see what comes as a result of this. But let's change track here. Jen, what have we got next?
Okay, well, Steph Curry is the latest athlete to sign a global ambassador deal with FTX. So as part of the deal, the NBA player is going to become an equity stakeholder in the company. I know we saw Tom Brady and his wife Giselle become stakeholders in the company. Again, they're also global ambassadors. Zach, I want to get your take on this because there was an interesting tidbit in this story that outlined Steph's ETH history. And I want you to tell us about it.
Oh, yes. It's all coming back to me now. So, Steph Curry, really good basketball player, one of the greatest shooters of all time from the Golden State Warriors. He made a bunch of waves when he was like, I think he bought like a Bored Ape or something like that, like one of these fancy profile pic NFTs.
For 55 ETH.
55 ETH, which is like, what is that? Like a large amount of money?
It's like a lot of money.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a large amount of money. So he did that. He's like, hey, I'm in crypto now, and he like had NFT, and it was like very exciting. And then there was this like then he like did a follow up tweet. He's like, hey, I'm new to crypto. What should I know? And there was this very cute interaction between Tom Brady and Steph Curry before it was known that they were both FTX shareholders, in which Tom Brady said, just don't put on the laser eyes because then you'll kill the market. So even him mentioning laser eyes yesterday killed the market, just speaking to Tom Brady's power over the crypto world. But we were able to follow the trail, right? These are all public networks. You can see everybody's business. And so because we knew that he had this particular NFT, you could see what other stuff he had in his wallet. And he had a number of other NFTs, admitted some other ones. He had something like 5 ETH sitting in there, which I always think is like super fun, right? Just to see sort of like public documentation about people's finances who are famous still is always kind of fun to the professional gossips and I don't know, chroniclers of the world. So yeah, that was the tidbit in there. But yeah, interesting to see Steph Curry get on the FTX bandwagon.
Yeah, I might just respond to that. Go ahead, Jen. I was going to say, just in the privacy front, as a journalist, I could see why that's very interesting to you. So want to report on all of that stuff. And as a privacy advocate, I can hope that that's a lesson to everyone to be very careful about mixing wallets and things that you publicly associate with yourself. Just be very cognizant that people will then have a record of all of your history, like we now do with this person. So yeah, just be aware of that. There are different tools you could use to protect your privacy, and financial privacy is very important. So Jen, I'll throw back to you.
Don't listen to Naomi, celebrities. Celebrities.
Yeah, it's so much fun for us. Yeah. Next time we'll mute Naomi. I was going to say that ETH history goes back, I think, about 14 days. And I wanted to read a quote from the press release that announced the partnership. Steph said, "I'm excited to partner with a company that demystifies the crypto space and eliminates the intimidation factor for first-time users." So again, we see FTX partnering with athletes and celebrities who kind of bridge that gap for first-time users and building on that trust that we've talked about so much on the show. And I think FTX is doing such a great job. I'm just so worried that the SEC is coming for them next.
Of course they are. I mean, FTX can't even really offer most of their products in the US. They have two divided, companies the same way that Binance did. One, FTX US and FTX International. Obviously, FTX US doesn't offer nearly the same stuff that FTX International does. And it seems that it doesn't matter whether you petition these things or not. The SEC is just going to find ways to come and pounce on all of you. Sorry, guys, I'm getting really snarky here. This whole SEC fight is bothering me so much. Like,
Naomi, control.
Gary is our friend.
About this. Gary is not our friend. Gary is destroying crypto. And when we first started, at the start of the year, when we were talking about the library case, and I made the point and said, the SEC is trying to kill crypto. The precedents they're setting up in their case basically it describes every single crypto project bar maybe a couple, right? And everyone's like, oh, well, we'll see. And then since then, you've just got all of these rulings coming out. They're fighting all of these things. They're fighting stable coins. They're fighting lending platforms. They're considering everything a security, and it's driving me batty. And I know it has nothing to do with this topic. So I'm going to end my rant there. And I'm really sorry, guys.
Well, now that they have Steph Curry and Tom Brady, you just can't fight those champions. Those champions will win every time. Gary versus Tom versus Steph. That is a
10 championships.
Gary versus the Laser. That's
so many rings.
Gary can't take on 10 championships.
So many rings. All right, we're going to leave it there. We'll see what happens in the SEC saga tomorrow. All right, this is The Hash. This has been The Hash. Welcome to The Hash. I'm Zach Seward. We got Naomi Brockwell, Will Foxley, and Jen Sanasi. This is where we give you your daily rundown of what you need to know in the crypto world. We're done. We crossed the finish line for this episode. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, CoinDesk TV has all about Bitcoin for you at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then there's the morning show, First Mover, 9 a.m. Eastern. And then you get to hang out with us again. So we'll look forward to that. Until then, you have a great day. And yeah, you guys have anything to say?
See you guys.
See
Bye.
ya.